From Nigeria, we're moving straight to South Africa, where the President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his second day of testimony at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry on Thursday.
Now, Ramaphosa faced more questions about the management of state-owned enterprises as it was handled under the Zuma administration. He's likely to be last witness of the commission before he concludes his report after 3 years of testimony. Now, joining us this morning once again is South African journalist and editor Diane Hawker. Morning, Diane.
Morning.
Morning. Now, the president spent 2 full days testifying. What was the focus of yesterday's testimony by Ramaphosa?
Well, the testimony focused really on how the ANC was involved inadvertently in running the state. The African National Congress, which is the ruling party of which the President Ramaphosa is also the president, has its own deployment committee. And a large part of the testimony looked at how that deployment committee actually, in a way, directed key positions, the hiring of people to key positions in the state. Another issue that came up, which was quite central, was the state security department and how it has been handled. Recently, the president actually reshuffled his cabinet, and actually moved the state security department into his own presidency department. And there were questions about why that might have been the case, because the commission had previously heard that there was actually a parallel apparatus being run within the state security department, where there were still some state security agents who were loyal to the former president, and that they were actually in a way diverting resources from the state security and their main core tasks to actually do work on behalf of the former president Jacob Zuma. Now, the president was initially a little bit reluctant to answer questions about that, but ultimately he did concede that these were the concerns raised at the commission were part of the reason why he actually had moved the state security department into the presidency. He said that there were some investigations that were meant to be taking place that were actually locked away in cabinets, and they were not actually, being properly investigated as to whether resources were being channeled in a different direction. And that's part of the reason why he moved that department into his cabinet.
Now, talking about ruling party and divided loyalty, although Ramaphosa was testifying on his role in the state, now the ANC did come up several times. Can you tell us some more about that?
Yes, absolutely. Like I mentioned, the deployment committee of the ANC has been quite a big issue at the State Capture Commission. The first time that the president testified, he was testifying in his role as the head of the ANC. And the commission tried to get a bit of an understanding as to how does the ANC's policy actually work. And now they kind of married that with how decisions were made in the state. For example, when it came to the appointment of heads of state-owned entities, often the ANC would be consulted, or a decision would come from the ANC headquarters as to who should be appointed. But now there's questions about the veracity of that process and to what extent the ruling party should have been dealing with these issues, and whether it should really have been more of a consideration, not about cadre deployment, but more about whether someone is fit for the job and whether they are actually the best person. And we anticipate that when the report is actually finalized, that will also be one of the issues, because one of the aspects of state capture is that external parties were giving instructions to people within government about appointments of ministers, about appointments of heads of department. And that's really not the way that things should be taking place in a constitutional democracy.
Well, Diane, that brings me to the question about the man clearly embattled in all of this and clearly spending time in jail right now. It's Jacob Zuma. What about his role as former president Jacob Zuma? Did it really come up with this commission yesterday?
Yes, absolutely. Our current president, Ramaphosa, was deputy president at the time of the state capture situation. So it was inevitable that he was going to, start speaking in some way about his predecessor and how government was handled. While the former president might not have outright, come out and criticize the former president Jacob Zuma, he did mention things like saying that the way that cabinet was being run previously, with cabinet cabinet ministers working in silos and not knowing what's happening in other people's departments, that was problematic. And inadvertently, that is a judgment on the predecessor. He also spoke about, lack of oversight, issues that were brought to the former president that were not addressed, and Zuma, obviously, he could have responded to some of these allegations if he had agreed to come and testify at the commission, because there are a number of allegations that deal directly with him and his relationship with the Gupta family. But as we know, he's refused to come to the commission, and that's why he's currently incarcerated. So there was some answering that Ramaphosa had to do from the perspective of the former deputy president and a member of the government and a member of the African National Congress. He admitted quite a lot that things were not handled correctly in the Zuma administration, and tried to indicate that under his administration that there are things that government is trying to fix, such as capacitating the National Prosecuting Authority to prosecute, such as ensuring that state security is handled properly, those kind of things.
Right. Now, Diane, it's been a really long day for the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. What really happens next?
The commission has got a lot of evidence to sift through. Over the last 2 months or so, they've heard less testimony, and they've been using their time to start compiling their report. But they have had 1 or 2 witnesses. The commission indicated that the president is meant to be the last witness that they have, and now they get into that area of compiling the final report. They have been at work for almost 3 years now. This commission started in 2018, so there's quite a lot of evidence that has come forward, and we're expecting that the report itself is going to be quite detailed, that will go into all the different types of testimony that we've heard. There isn't a date yet of when we'll get that report, but of course we'll update the viewers as soon as there's an indication on that.
All right, Diane, just before we let you go, it looks like there was a different mood for Ramaphosa, unlike what we saw on Wednesday. It was more like he clearly talked more, like what we saw on Wednesday. He did more speaking on Thursday. So what are people in South Africa? What's been the reaction from yesterday's inquiry and appearance by Ramaphosa?
I think that the concerns that South Africans have had, some of them have been addressed by his testimony. I think that some of the criticism has been that the first time that the president went, he didn't really get into the detail of what his role was, or whether he tried to stop state capture in any way. And the commission was a bit more direct in its questioning about his role and whether he tried to do anything as a deputy president to stop state capture. Some of the answers, he said that he wasn't aware of things that were taking place, which the commentary largely on social media has been, how could he have been within the government and not have been aware? But in other instances, he said that he did have a concern, and he decided, instead of resigning, to try and stay on within the ANC and to fight for the ruling party presidency, so that he could eventually become the president. So he talked a little bit about his approach to kind of trying to combat state capture. Some people have said, he could have been more vocal at the time of state capture, and that now him speaking out is too little too late. But at the end of the day, his government now does have a responsibility to correct some of what has happened, as well as to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And that's really what a lot of South Africans are paying attention to, as to whether his tough talking on corruption is actually evidenced in action in his government.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Diane Hawker. Yes, a South African journalist and editor for the latest and Ramaphosa's appearance yesterday in the Zondo Commission. Thanks once again, Diane, for joining us right here on Breakfast Central.
Thank you so much.